and welcome to Inside Chats 13. It's great to have you all here at Soho Square back. It's going to be a great night. Today we have Adam Baker. We're going to speak about reframing data storytelling. It's going to actually be our first event talking about that part of the process in the research. So we are really looking forward to tonight. So we are not trying to put any pressure on you, but yeah, we are expecting some homework for tonight. I'm joking, it's okay. But thanks so much for being here. And can you just, for the start, share a short intro about yourself, and then, of course, Indico Labs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks for having me, everyone. Thanks for coming along. I'm Adam. I come from a market research background. I started my life as an omnibus researcher in YouGov. Yeah, I've seen a few faces there. yeah. So yeah, one of my responsibilities there was obviously working on projects day to day, fast turnaround research. When I started there, we had a 48-hour turnaround on projects. By the time I left there, we were doing 24-hour turnaround on projects, and we were looking at how we could turn it into real-time reporting and real-time data. So that was it was already moving to faster deliverables. And on top of that, we had to deliver a report with each and every project as well. I was also responsible for specifically B2B omnibus studies and also international studies. So a lot of multi-audience projects as well, where we'd be producing the same report for multiple audiences as well. And I've actually got a few colleagues here today, Majid being one of them. Majid is the founder of Indico Labs, and I was an internal customer of Majid's when we were at Indico Labs. So one of the big projects that I worked on was Google, and we had it was their Chromecast study, so that probably dates it quite a bit. We had an international project for them where we were having to produce the same report for the same research study for 30 different markets every single month, which was too often. It also meant that I was in an endless cycle of running through the same report. So I would finish one at the same time. I'm already in field with the next round, and I'm already starting the next round of reporting by the time I delivered the final reports. Majid was brought in to help improve the efficiency of that reporting, and I was his first internal customer, and he was helping me to essentially automate the production of those reports. So instead of me having to manually copy and paste the data over from Excel to PowerPoint for 30 different markets every single month, Majid saved me. And then from there, we kind of spotted a gap in the market in terms of tools that were available to help researchers do it themselves. I think one of the problems that we had at that point was that, like any tracker, Google wanted to make changes regularly. You know, it's not everything is tracked truly. If that was the case, because everything was being done through code that I didn't understand as a lowly researcher, I would have to go back to Majid and his team and say, hey guys, they want to make these changes to these 30 reports. Can you update the code to be able to handle this new change? So I would go to the back of the queue, and I'd have to wait my turn to come round to having the updates made. What Majid saw there was an opportunity to create a solution for the researcher themselves to be able to handle these types of projects. He created a first iteration of the software working from his bedroom, called me up one day and said, hey, I've got this thing, I think you'd be interested in it, come and have a look at it. So I went and had a look, and that's how my time at Indico Labs started. Joined Majid there in 2019, and since then I've been looking after a lot of the outward facing parts of the Indico Labs business. So customer support, sales, marketing, customer success, and so on. Hence why I'm here today.
Amazing, thank you so much. Okay, so let's start from, I don't know, let's try to dissect the data storytelling. From the start, what is the most common problem in data storytelling?
By far, the biggest issue with data storytelling is not having enough time to actually do the storytelling part. That was my problem at the time. It's still a problem now. We speak to our customers day in, day out with the same issue. They're still manually taking data from Excel and putting it into a PowerPoint report to give to their customer. That process is, I'm sure you've all experienced it, you'll all know, it's time consuming, it's slow, it's open to human error. And instead of actually telling the story and generating narratives for your customer to understand what the data actually means to them, you're spending that time moving all of the data over into the PowerPoint. So what we aim to do, and what I think other data reporting solutions aim to do, reporting efficiency tools aim to do, is to help people with that process of moving data into PowerPoint more effectively. Now, one of the things that I wanted to chat about today is, I think when we spoke about this, I was telling you about how when we talk to people about making that process more efficient, instantly everyone thinks about trackers. We need to automate these trackers. We need this repeatable. It happens again and again. It's something that can be automated. I think with a lot of these data visualization tools or reporting efficiency tools, there's an opportunity to use them earlier on in the actual research process and start to use them on more ad hoc projects as well. One of the biggest things that we hear from a sales team is, we're not like everyone else. We don't do any repeatable stuff. Everything that we do is ad hoc. Like, how are you going to help us? And actually, even though things are ad hoc, you're still, at the end of the day, more often than not, delivering a PowerPoint report. That is the most common output for a market research agency or market research team, probably. I'm aware, looking at the names. All of this is geared towards agencies because we mostly work with agencies. The same applies to if you're in an internal team and you're working with stakeholders. There's still the process of getting that into the visual format for the customer. And I think there are ways to do that outside of the tracking study.
Interesting. Interesting what you said, that every client thinks that they are unique, and you start seeing patterns over time, I would imagine. Interesting how you also mentioned how the company got started. You mentioned that you had a problem and you were able to solve it with, be it some automation. Mm-hmm. But I would also imagine that over time you've built this modular approach of different automations and tool sets. Can you speak more about that journey and what that data framework or automation framework looks like now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's it's an interesting one, because as I said, when we go to try and sell our solutions, people are often assuming that we're going to help them automate their trackers or those types of projects. And actually, we do help people with trackers, of course. That's one thing that we do. But more often than not, those trackers we do outside of our software within a service team, because of the complexities within trackers, because they are, like, a lot of them have been going for a very long time. They might have data that comes from 3 or 4 different agencies over time. It's hard to get all of the data aggregated within one data set, more often than not. So reporting tools don't actually very often lend themselves very well to tracking studies. Of course, you can run tracking studies through them if you're willing to make some compromises in terms of the level of automation that you're providing to yourselves. Whether that's 60, 70%, that's still better than doing it all manually, right? But when we're talking to people about our software, we actually did a lot of work with we always soft launch products with a team of beta testers, and we gather feedback from them before we go for a full launch and have like a big marketing event where we talk about our software. We've started to uncover new workflows, new automation workflows And even the terminology that we're using is we're trying to move away from automation to talk about productivity tools. There's a few really key use cases. Obviously, international studies or any multi-audience study where you have to produce the same report for different audiences. Those could be different cohorts, those could be individual regions or different teams if you're doing employee research, those types of things. You might need to produce the same report multiple times. One of our customers just last week, I've actually just got off the phone with her today to talk about doing a case study, but she won't mind me if talking about it if I don't use the name of the company, because she's a bit worried that their customer's going to find out that they set themselves enough time. They set themselves a month and a half to produce 30 reports. They were able to do it in 3 days. Wow. The interesting part for us is, what does that mean from there?
Are they charging per day, per hour?
Actually, it was interesting. Yeah, that was what I thought was the worry. But she said, actually, we still charge for the value. And that led to a really interesting discussion around how do you price things? Because it's not, why are you worried about your customer finding out? Because you still delivered the same thing, if not better, because you've had more time to then, on top of that, write some really interesting narratives, start to pull out a really interesting story, and generate a report that's ultimately better than it ever would have been if you had done it, if you'd pulled multiple resources in, maybe some freelancers, to do it all manually. So that's one thing. The other part that's really interesting, and we've got a nice case study on this, is we were working with a very small team who they only have limited resources to basically, and this will probably be true for some of you, you're working with very small teams. They've got very limited resources, but they've got different stakeholders asking them for stuff at different times, or they've got multiple projects running at the same time. And they can already see that they've got a bottleneck coming. I've got 3 reports coming in a month's time that I need to write. They're all going to close in field. They're all going to be ready to go at the same time. So how am I going to fit all of that into one space? So what we encouraged her to do is actually bring the discovery piece forward in the process for her projects, so that even if you've got kind of 80% completion on your survey data, you can start to pick out some key narratives, you can start to pull out some stories, you can start to see where the data is going, because at that point, you're only, the number of people that come in after that aren't going to have a huge impact on the data. Yes, some things might change in how significant they are in terms of the differences. The order of the top 5 things might come out. But with our software, they're able to start designing the report, and they already know from the objectives that they set with the customer what their customer wants to understand and know about. So they can already start to build a picture and then use our tool to set everything up and create some of those rules around, okay, this chart, when I visualize this chart, I want to SIG test the data at 95% confidence level. I also want to order the data from high to low based on this column, and I only want to show the top 10 response options. You can create those rules so that when your final data is ready, you just replace the data behind it, and those rules are all reapplied so that it's not looking at the old data and organizing things in the old way. So there are definitely situations where reporting productivity solutions can help researchers earlier on in the research process as well.
Amazing. And so you are innate, so you help your clients to go faster from Excel to like PowerPoint, right? So do you have like a number how much faster it is, like with you guys in the equation? Or it varies, of course, like.
Of course it varies, yeah. It's like any project, it varies from project to project, even within an organization. So within a team within an organization, it really comes down to what that project is and how they're going to work on the project. But a lot of the feedback that we get is roughly around they're being able to do it in 20% of the time that it took them beforehand.
Okay.
If it's international studies, if it's something that's repeatable, something that they've done before, if it's a tracker, those types of things. Where it makes a real difference, I think, outside of that is in being able to actually explore the data. And that's one of the key things that I wanted to talk to you guys about today is if you're a visual thinker and your go-to is looking at a dashboard that's got that you can't really, it's only got like 3 or 4 different KPIs in it, and you can't really deviate from that without having to get a Tableau specialist or someone like that to come and make changes. Or let's say you are just looking at the data tables, which is probably quite often the way a lot of people are still doing it when they're looking at survey data. Our customers have started to use the software to actually upload the data, quickly generate a bunch of slides, because it takes seconds, not hours, and start to explore the data within our solution to actually start to find some of those stories and uncover those narratives that you might not have had time to uncover previously. It's difficult to put an actual percentage on time on that.
Sorry, the reason why I'm asking that, I'm always wondering, a lot of tools are selling the dream of saving you time, right? Do you know what do they do with that saved time? Do they use that time to actually create better reports and stuff like that, or they just like, I don't know, like go to a pub or something else?
Well, there is an element of that, right? Like there honestly is an element of that, because I'm sure everyone in this room, I was talking to someone earlier about this exact thing of the old school mentality of how companies were run. You do 50 to 80 hour weeks, you work late, you have to deliver a report. That Google project that I was working on, I would come in at 8 and I would leave at 8 because I had to finish that project. It had to be delivered by a certain time. So there is an element of when you automate that at 5:30, maybe I can go to the pub. So employee satisfaction, employee morale, that is a huge benefit of being able to do things faster. From a business impact point of view, beyond employee morale, there's things around what else are you going to spend that time on? The obvious things are looking at, okay, how can we expand our relationship with this customer? How can I make some recommendations of how they can expand on their research that they've done with us already, and show them what else we can do and how we can help them even further? So building better customers that you can keep for longer, hopefully. New jobs coming in, being able to spend more time on proposals and those types of things as well, which probably won't apply to some of you who are in agencies, in brand side. But I think the biggest thing that both would agree on is the way I see it moving, and especially with the introduction of AI coming into it as well, is if you've got automation and artificial intelligence being able to generate the stuff that people are looking at and reading, there's still always, for me, been a big gap in once you deliver that project's usually over. I think there's an opportunity to deliver those things earlier, give maybe a week or 2 for the customer to digest it, look at it, read it, and then go and spend a couple of hours with them. You know, you've saved yourself 10 hours, spend 2 hours with the customer, talk them through it, answer any questions that they've got, start to talk about, okay, where do you want to take this next? You've done this, like, if it's around a specific product launch, do you want to start talking to us about an ad campaign and some ad research? There's those types of things that you can start to then expand into.
That's a brilliant approach. I remember one time agencies we used to scope for some of their time in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes so much fun also. I imagine you deliver that piece of work and then you let people have time to review it and ask questions.
Yeah.
Lead you to deep dive and actually explore it further. It's not just you deliver this 40, 70 slide report and that's there. Right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a joke. It's not really a question. It's more time. So speaking about time, you're basically selling the biggest asset you can have to companies. You just spoke about some of the benefits they may have as a business, whether that is internal satisfaction from the team, obviously, productivity, efficiency. But how, let's call it a manager of a team that buys your software, your tools, sell it internally to their team members? But I would imagine you'd be quite hesitant to change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very common barrier for us as a company, is we're quite often getting in at the buyer level and talking to the buyer. It would probably be a research operations specialist, or even at a smaller company level, it might be the MD or something like that, where they've spotted that they want to improve this. But does the researcher want to improve that? I think, and I was talking to someone else about this earlier as well, a lot of researchers actually really enjoy the process of noodling around in PowerPoint and just, like fiddling around with what the colors are going to be, like changing the design of the report. So it's very difficult to then say to them, oh, you're not going to have to do that anymore. And also there's a thing around, and again, this AI is going to be another one of those things where as you start to introduce these technologies, how do you sell these things into researchers when they're going to be sat there thinking, that's my job. Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's where these other things come in around coaching people on how that's going to change their work and how there is still a place for them within the organization. It's just that their role is changing slightly. And actually that you can still enjoy noodling around in a reporting tool. It will just make it much more efficient. So you can uncover even more stuff. You're not overwhelmed with streams and streams of data in a table. You can see it nicely laid out. You can start to see it in visual format. And when you're happy, you can download it to PowerPoint. And if you want to, you can still mess around in there. But I think the researcher's role needs to start evolving again to back towards the debrief, back towards spending more time with the human. And I think that's where AI is going to go as well. AI and HI, if you've got the human intelligence part, there's still going to be a human there who is absorbing the information. They might chuck it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to summarize it for them. But that doesn't beat having a conversation with a person around, okay, you're helping us solve this problem. You're helping us uncover some research to help us solve this problem. What are your recommendations? What does the data tell you? What does it tell you when you've chucked it into ChatGPT and asked it to summarize the data for you? And that's where it becomes a bit more of a consultative role than a just copy and paste role.
Yeah, but like we are a market research platform, and once we were speaking to a client of potential automation of the scripting part of the questionnaire, and they brought in their guy who his literally role was called a scripter. And his job was all day just scripting surveys, and then us trying to sell automation of scripting. It didn't connect well between the two of us. Of course, we would literally replace his job, right? So there are a lot of agency that still value, their wide stack of different tools. But I think, of course, the era of AI is here, and automation is already in the line with that. And do you agree, or can you share your thoughts? Are we experiencing researchers, and especially research agencies, moving to this consulting phase of the evolution, and not spend hours and days on copy pasting and using 10 tools for a single study.
Yeah, definitely. I think people's roles will diversify. That scripter already has a technical understanding of how to do something quite technical, right? So they're probably going to learn how to be a really good prompt engineer and go to other organizations that don't already have that stuff in place and help them integrate those types of things. So I think there's two parts to it. There's obviously the research operations part, or the research support teams. Their roles are going to be changing a lot, and a lot of them are going to have to be as up to date as possible with the different AI solutions that are available out there to stay on top of everything. But there's also numerous possibilities as well. The researcher role is slightly different, and I honestly do believe that the researcher role, there's obviously scope for automating the parts that don't involve talking to the customer and helping them understand what the data means. But that's the bit that the end client is paying for anyway. They're not paying necessarily, although some of them would believe that they are paying to see nice slides with charts and tables on them. What they're actually paying for is the insight that goes on top of that. And that piece, I don't think goes away. I think if anything, that piece gets stronger from a research point of view. It'd be interesting towards the end to hear what other people think about that, because I'm not sure what people who are doing it day in and day out actually feel around that as well.
We didn't do it like that before in our time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
It seems that your company is quite at the kind of the front phase of that change, or driving some of these automations. So any client that is working with you is almost like the early adopter, right?
Yeah.
But would it be natural to also say that if the whole industry is about to go on this journey, that you're getting a lot of early learnings in terms of whether people have to, you said, coach people within their teams through change.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other trends that you're seeing that the companies you're starting to work with automation, with the advent of AI, are going through, and what maybe advice can you give to the rest of the crowd here?
Yeah, I think there's one of the big things that we're hearing more and more is around a combination of quant and qual going within reporting. We specialize in quant. That's our area. I think it's not going to be long until we have to learn how to specialize in qual as well, because more often than not, when we're talking to a customer about a report that they need support with, they'll tell us about the qual element that supports that. And one of the big changes around AI is a quant qual hybrid model of collecting data. I'm sure you're very much aware of that as well, but I think the traditional survey isn't going anywhere. I think people are still going to want that for a long time. But within that, or as part of that, there's this hybrid of quant qual, which is being able to do interviews at scale and then analyze the data and pick out themes at scale as well. Almost real time, more often than not real time as well. So if you're a quant researcher and you're not in the qual world yet as well, then that's definitely an area that people need to start looking at, I think, or at least understanding the two coming together, because that does seem to be the latest thing that we hear about.
So we just launched a month ago, conversational AI inside. And what does that do? It does a live interaction with the respondent inside a survey, and you can put follow-up prompts and stuff like that. But from the quant side, it was actually a challenge how to show it inside and export, like, because all the stuff, you don't have one, I don't know, open end. You have like 3, 4, or 5. And usually they are much bigger sentences. So how do you show it inside and export, and how do you also analyze it? So yeah, it is a challenge, and it is going to be the near future, the hybrid of quant and qual, and how do we show this more richer data in a quant world. But yeah, can we do a step back from the YouGov career a long time ago?
Yeah.
Do you remember you said like you went from 48 hours to 24? How hard was that? And do you feel that there is still a need for faster results? So do we need faster results or faster reports? What is more important from your point of view?
Yeah, interesting. Firstly, it was hard. It was not necessarily from an actual operational data collection point of view. YouGov were lucky still are lucky that they've got a massive, good quality panel. They could dip into NatRep samples and not burn the panel very easily. There was something like 20 waves non-overlapping we could do of a UK NatRep sample at 2,000 respondents. And the 24-hour surveys were 24-hour surveys were 2,000 respondents every single time. And we'd be running omnibus studies, for people who don't know. I'm sure everyone does, but they are you might be working with multiple different customers and putting their shorter surveys together into one bigger survey that then goes out to the audience. We had a limit on the number of questions you could ask on that. So we ended up running maybe 2, 3, 4 of those a day to just deal with the number of questions that people wanted to ask. The difficult part was being able to deliver those projects. The reporting part of that was the most challenging part, because you always had deadlines and you're working on 10, 15 projects at any one time. So you might have a project where you're talking to the customer about scripting it, or you've scripted it and someone else is quality checking it and going through the link. Or you might even be beyond the delivery stage where 80% of our customers were PR agencies. So they were building press releases off the back of them. If they wanted to mention YouGov, they would have to be checked by our research team, the same research team who's running the research and doing all of these projects. So the difficult part was, how do you churn that out at scale and add a new deliverable to that? Because before we moved to the 24 hours, we were just doing data tables. Now everyone comes with a report. How do you do that? Well, we turned to automation. And that was the only way we could have achieved it. Your question around, do people need faster results or faster reports? I actually think it's not necessarily either. I think people need better quality insights and a better quality understanding of what that data means to them. And that brings me back to the human aspect of it. That's the researcher's job. That's the researcher's role, to tell people what this data means to them and how it impacts their topic, whether it's a business problem or an ad or something like that. And I do think there are companies that are starting to move towards seeing value in slower research. That's more, you see all these boutique agencies that are setting themselves up as consultants. This is what people mean when they talk to us about how they do things differently to everyone else. They are spending more time with the customer. They're putting more emphasis on giving that full human experience alongside the research.
So boutique is the word. But 100% agree with you on, I saw the shift from the fast, because data quality is a big issue like lately, last 1-2 years, and especially the rise of AI bots and stuff like that. But I believe like 3-4 years we had whole that shift about we need it faster and faster, and now we are at that time, okay, so maybe we don't need it that faster, we just need that AI bots stay outside of it, right? So data quality and the whole part of it, what do you do with those insights, I think have finally overtook the fast bit of the equation from my point of view.
It's interesting, right?
Was trying to go. Sometimes the opposite of a good thing is also a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Just to pivot that question to synthetic data, maybe just looking at data slightly differently. What's your view on it, and what role do you think it could play in research? Could it be the first pre-qualification step of question before you dive in deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, that's the only role of, well, that's a broad statement. It's right now, it's the only role of synthetic data within the market research world. If you're pinning your big important decisions on synthetic data, I'm fairly confident it's going to go wrong at some point, right? But if you're a creative agency and you have 15 different ads that you're not sure how to pick and choose from, and you want to get it down to 5 quite quickly, you can use synthetic data to understand where people's eyes are drawn to on that ad, if it's a visual ad, or which pieces of the video people would resonate with versus wouldn't resonate with, or how it's going to leave them feeling. Those can happen. Those things can happen instantly with synthetic data, and cheap as well. But you still, when you get it down to those 5 ads, I think there's still a place for real life respondents going out to talk to people and find out from those 5 which one should you go with, or which 2 should you go with. So I don't think synthetic respondents should. They might, but I don't think they should replace real life respondents at that stage.
It certainly has a place from my point of view, but I think we are going to have a future where we have a term called human insights, respondents, or something like that, and it's going to be much more expensive than what it is now. So it could potentially help in some ways, but of course, in some ways, it's going to replace some of the research and some mundane ones that we don't need humans. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting shift in both cases. Reporting is still going to be there. So do you have any juicy case study that you can share, or something where you ended up with a client in a pub or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one that really turned our heads recently was this customer who went from a month and a half worth of reporting, bringing it down to 3 days. And she even said in her email, like, a comfortable 3 days. For me, that's why we do this, right? Like, that's why we got into this business. We want to help people do their jobs more efficiently so that they can focus on what they're actually interested in, right? And most of us get into market research and insights because we're interested in data, we're interested in uncovering our interpretation of the data and also telling people about it.
I'm not sure was their process so bad or your tool is so good, but that is an interesting shift.
The thing is, right, so it's the same report, and it was quite a long report. As soon as you multiply that, if you're doing it manually, even if one takes you an hour or one takes you half a day, if you take into account the quality checking and all of that kind of stuff as well, if you have to do 2 and it was taking you half a day, that's a day. She was doing 30. And with our tool, once you've set it up, you can just, within 10 minutes.
Imagine doing a single report for a month and a half. Yeah, I would die.
What, not to interview you, but have you guys started looking at synthetic data within Picator? And what
Yeah, we have, like for now, because we have like both market research and CX clients. So, we had explorations in that phase, but then we decided more to put the focus. So we launched like conversational AI a month ago. Now we're going to launch AI summary reports. Then we're going to launch AI coding and stuff like that. So we are fans of automating and putting AI into all the bits of pieces of the research process, not the human insights. I still feel like that's the most like valuable part, and I'm interested in creating a future of a better research process with humans in the science center. I'm not at this stage. I'm not that excited about the synthetic data. I know that it's a hot topic, but I'm not sure that I personally would take business decisions from synthetic data. As you said, I would use it. I often use it for simple stuff, but to replace humans in some, in some really important strategic moves, and then say it's a synthetic data, just feel I wouldn't be comfortable with that. So I think it both has its own place in the research tech and in the research methodology. We are deciding at this stage to focus on the human insights and building AI all around that human. So that's our view for now. But I know that Artem is a really big fan of synthetic data, so we can have a fight afterwards. But
it's a tough fight to have with this guy.
No,
but let's definitely have a chat.
I don't fight outside the ring, but it's fine. No.
It's interesting that AI, I did want to talk a little bit about AI in reporting. We're obviously exploring it. We only focus on that part of the reporting process right now. So we're looking at how we can start to integrate AI into the processes that we offer. We're very conscious when we talk to even doing beta testing around that subject. We're calling it a research assistant. We're very keen on not using any term that implies anything else, because similar to what you were saying about the scripter, like as a researcher, a researcher takes pride in that final deliverable that they're offering to the customer. If you're telling me as a researcher, don't worry about it, I've got this tool that will just churn it out and you won't even have to think about it, that doesn't really, you're going to essentially be blocked for a starter. So we would never sell that product. But at the same time, it's not helpful. You still are going to need researchers. So what we are looking at doing is how can we build tools that help them to use AI to build an outline of a report very quickly, or feed in the objectives of the project and build out almost like a summary of the report. So it gives them more stuff to think about and dive into to add that layer of human insights that you talk about on top of that. So at the same time, we don't want the report that we produce to be the final report.
So it's enable rather than replace.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so shortly we're going to turn to Q&A. Before our audience thinks about juicy questions, do you have any everyday tips for data storytelling or anything on that? Some useful, easy tricks, or at least how to approach it?
It's a difficult one because everyone is different in the way that they like to approach things. I think that stick to what you know in terms of if you're happy digging around data tables to uncover stories, great, that works for you. If you're happier putting things into chart form to uncover stories, great, that's absolutely fine. But start to think about how you can do those things more efficiently. What tools can you use to help you query a set of data tables? What tools can you use to look at those slides or visual format more efficiently? Because there is going to be a need to get those reports into, like, AI will come for reporting. It will do. But the researchers need to be ready to still fight their corner and fight for that important human aspect that needs to go in there. So what tools can you use now to help you generate a better report more efficiently and at speed?
Amazing. Okay. With that, we can slightly turn to the Q&A. Do we have any questions? Yes, Maureen.
So, when you said a lot of people's guilty pleasure is looking at what colors they're going to put their PowerPoints in.
Yeah.
What is going to be, since your tool is going to do most of the work, what is going to be analysts' guilty pleasure if they use your tool to save time and efficiency, except for going to the pub at 5:30?
Well, I'd hope that it's chatting to their customers. And that would be my hope, right? Like, if you've got a spare hour, have a chat with your close customer that you work with day in, day, or your stakeholder, if it's internal or whatever. Go and have a chat with them, make sure that they understand the data that you've been providing to them, and find out what else they need. That would be really neat. But in reality, if you're like me, you probably want to get your head down and get stuck into something. I think you can still do those things, right? Like, at the moment, AI tools like ChatGPT is a chat. You still need someone on the other end, back and forth. And it's one of the genius moves that they made as a tool is putting it in chat format, because you can sit there and have a conversation with that and get good output at the end. Similar stuff can be done with design tools, or our customers still design their PowerPoint before it comes into our solution. So they still get to do that nice, like, color palette stuff and all of it, those things that they like. But I know that there are tools that are out there that help you design things better, or graphic design type better. I don't know whether the customer would think it is better. But getting used to those things and understanding that doing the interaction with those tools, I think that would be something that people who like that type of thing would get into.
So they can still play with colors inside your tool.
They can still play with colors.
Okay, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, do we have Majid? Yes.
I'm not sure if this is a juicy enough question, but for all of you, between suppliers and brands, who do you find are more kind of innovative and ready to change? You know, there's a lot of conceptions about agencies who are like stuck in their way, interested in their own way.
I can tell you, this is an interesting one with the new role. To unpack it, we have clients that can be data providers and resellers. They can be ad tech vendors. They can be brands direct. They can be also agencies, and they can be market research companies. So within each cohort, you almost have that let's call it index of 0 to 100, sophisticated and so on. I think the challenge is finding the right stakeholder who has enough time to actually understand the product, or is, let's call it, the right fit for you. So maybe as a use case, from one of the biggest market research companies right now, the challenge has been just finding the right person to speak to. But as soon as you find the right person and team, and showcase the value of the data that you're sitting on, immediately they're like, wow, that is possible, that is what we can achieve. And then it's taking the journey with them and making sure that they can actually use and leverage the data to tell the right story, drive the right business because that is also the challenge. So they may fall in love with the data set, but you have to nurture them to perhaps start with a what would you call it, managed service approach, and I'm sure you guys do the same with the coaching that you mentioned, and then coach them to a much more self-service approach as well, which is better for them. They can get more value from it, but also better, imagine you better for us as a company because that is much more scale.
Once we had I always tell that story because it's really funny to me. But yeah, once we had an agency who more of a freelancer slash agency, but the person came to me and he said like, or she said like, do you have AI? And I said like, which AI? And he said, any AI. And I'm like, well, but what kind of AI? Any AI so that I can say that we have AI. It was like, that's not a good way of doing things. I would say like, you need to have application of AI, not just AI. But yeah, so there is that agency hype for the new stuff and new things. On the brand side, I had a lot of times when we would come like, oh, we have this new flashy thing, conversational, and they would like, so what? Like, so what? How is that going to change my outputs? I only care about that. That is fine. Then you really try to dive in and try to explain them how this technology can help better outputs, because brands and agencies are completely two different clients, and there is this nonsense that everyone is trying to sell the same thing to both of them, and from my point of view it's just not the same, because agency cares about different things and brands care about different things, and we should approach them in that way. Back to your question, like it is slightly more on the agency side that they would try, not necessarily because they want to try, just because they think they are going to have a better, easier way of selling it. And brands are more there to challenge you. Is this really going to help me? So that was my experience.
Yeah, I mean, Madge will know, we don't particularly work with many end brands. Most of our customers are agencies. But what you said really resonates around finding the right person. That's something that we've talked about internally around, from a sales point of view, when you're going into an organization to try and sell our software or our services, you know that if you come up against someone who is unwilling to make tweaks or compromises, they're never going to buy or make changes. But if you come up against someone who is thinking about it in the right way, as in 60% automated is better than none, that's like perfect for us, because they value the ability to do things more efficiently, because those are the type of people who are also thinking about, what does that also mean for me and my team? Like, they're already thinking a step ahead to, okay, they're not just thinking I need to save time, they're thinking I need to save time because I'll then be able to do these things and win more customers and have more meaningful conversations with our customers.
You have any questions? Yes.
I kind of want to build on this question because I'm a client-side researcher. So a lot of what you said at the beginning, I felt that pain of copy-pasting and all that. But I'm surprised that conversation is still valid. I would have assumed that, and that's completely not my world right now. I mean, we have automation dashboards, integrated survey software. It's completely different. So are you betting on the fact that PowerPoint is there to stay? Is that the bet, or do you think reporting in general is moving to a different direction? Because that's what I would have assumed would happen.
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously there's brands that work a lot with dashboards and all of those types of things as well. I think 10 years ago, if you asked me that question, I would have told you PowerPoint is dead. Like, people are going to get rid of it. We won't be delivering reports in PowerPoint in 10 years' time. We're still automating PowerPoint for people, right? It's still a big problem. It is still a big problem. I can't talk for brands. I can talk for agencies. I'm assuming the brands are asking for these PowerPoints to be delivered to them as well. Otherwise, that's one of their key deliverables. These agencies can also offer dashboards and those types of things. So it's an interesting one. I don't necessarily see PowerPoint going away quickly. All of our tools are online. So, we're pulling the PowerPoint into the software and then showing the data in a user interface online. We've toyed with and we've tried a few things where the reporting software becomes the deliverable. So the user can still interact with the data. The end user, the end customer, can still interact with the data, ask questions, query it. No one wanted it. Everyone still wanted to produce PowerPoint. I think we were too early because that was something that we were trying right at the very beginning. I think if we were to go that way again now, people would get interested in it and people would move towards it. The other thing that I think is going to be huge, and you're probably, if you're in a client side, already looking at these types of things, is data storage, of where you can host all of your data, all of your reports, all of everything that you've done over the past few years, and query it, so that you don't have teams that are running the same report again that was done a year ago by another team, because that information might still be valid. So before you go ahead and do that, you can run a query and get all the things that the agency already knows. Tied in with up-to-date AI, it can bring in other sources as well. So I do think there's something within that as well, and generating reports off the back of those. But you're still probably going to have someone sat there waiting for a PowerPoint that summarizes that for them as well.
It's interesting. I would have just assumed storytelling would have changed. I mean, I left agency design 6 years ago, so my world was already where you are in terms of how can we get data and call and quant and make that the next thing. So it's been eye-opening to see that actually there are still conversations happening which seem to be kind of obsolete or in the past. But I guess it's just how people still tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, Lisa.
One pitfall that I see with automated reporting is noise, essentially, because no matter how well designed a survey is, like, not every question will give you any valuable insight. So if there is a report that creates a chart for absolutely every question, then I know that some people, not necessarily researchers, but depending on who the report is then shown to, the stakeholders in the organization, they will cling on to every single chart that they're given and insist that it's something important that needs to stay in the report and that needs to get communicated to internal stakeholders or the client, etc. So I wonder if, to avoid this pitfall, that in the future we will see kind of tools that are so intelligent that they will basically help us dynamically report and create reports only based on who will be the end user of it. Because if you have a massive survey, not all data in it will be equally relevant to the HR manager, the marketing manager, the other people within an organization. So how do you think that we're going into a direction where these tools will also be able to help us reduce the noise?
Yeah, absolutely. The first iteration of the tool that we created, we made that mistake of turning absolutely everything into a slide and a chart, and then giving the user the ability to then go through that and look at it, right? So we were still talking about it at that point. We were already talking about it at that point as an efficiency tool or a productivity tool rather than an automation tool. Yes, you upload your tables and it goes bang, and everyone was impressed with that. But when they start using it, they go, actually, I'm equally as overwhelmed, probably slightly less so, but I'm as overwhelmed as I was when I was just looking at streams and streams of tables. And some of our customers have data sets with 1,000 different questions in them for some reason. Yeah, and imagine uploading that to the software and getting 1,000 slides. That's noise. That's not helpful. What we've moved towards in our new solution is helping people, okay, you design that one slide that you know that your team are interested in. You populate it more efficiently, and you can already see that it actually doesn't show what you... That could be equally as interesting, obviously, if it doesn't show what you were expecting it to. But from here, you have the option to repeat that for some other questions within the data set. It's not doing it all automatically, it's more systematic, and it's more of a approach of, I've built this once, I could build this for 10 other things. And by repeating it, I'm doing that within seconds. So I'm not wasting any time, and it doesn't matter if I don't use them. I can throw those away. Or they inform a more detailed, better quality appendix section that if your stakeholder's still asking for those streams and streams of slides, they're getting better. They're getting fewer of them, but they're getting better quality outputs at the same time. I think what's interesting is how we're looking at integrating AI within that is to recommend a structure for the report based on the objectives and the audience that you have provided, but that you've put into the tool. But it will happen so quickly that you're getting to that yes or no faster as a researcher, and you're already being able to determine, okay, well, what happens if I tweak my question or my query and look at a slightly different cut of the data? You'll have more time to be able to do that than you would have done if you were just building to brief and already seeing as you're doing it that it's not the right thing to report on, but you know that you still have to do it. Hopefully that makes sense. Do you agree with that? I mean, I'd be interested to.
I'm on the fence still.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't used a tool yet, which has given me that very sweet spot middle ground where I just get the tables and exactly the charts that I need to kind of kickstart and speed up the analysis, and I can right away get into the deep dive. It's either an all or nothing sort of thing. Either it gives me all the tables and all the charts, and then, as you said, it slows me down equally, or it's so top level that there's still a lot of manual work to do after. So I find it very hard to find a solution that finds that sweet spot in the middle. Yeah,
that's just to add to that a little bit, the problem that we have when we're talking to potential customers about going down that workflow is you're still interested in doing some of the work, right? You're still interested in noodling around with the report and uncovering some of the stories. Some people want automation to just be automation, right? And you want it to be that nice balance of, it's not just giving me everything and useless stuff. I'm still able to have some input in it and use it to help me uncover those stories. I think that's really interesting, and I think that's where we want to get to with the AI element of it. It's not easy, and I don't know how far we're going to get with it, but that's definitely something that we aspire to.
I think on that interesting exchange, we're going to close it for tonight. Thank you so much, Adam. I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.